Hi, I'm Paul Brodie. We are back. I know you noticed, I know some of you noticed, we didn't put out a video for 3 weeks. Mitch went for a holiday, I went for a holiday, I came home and then I got sick. So no excuses, but we're back. So we're going to work on the BSA today. I'm going to show you some things. I took it apart 7 months ago and it sat on the bench, and I ordered parts, and now putting it back together again. It's not the easiest thing to do because my memory of how it goes together. I've never done a BSA before. I've done other engines, but not a BSA. So my plan was to take the BSA, have it all assembled, and take it on the Moto Giro in September. But obviously I'm behind schedule, so that's not going to happen. So I'm taking the Aramaki, the Ala Verde, and I assembled that bike I think in 2001. It's got 2 miles on it, and that's just from pushing the bike around the shop. So this will be good to finally put some miles on the bike and find out how it runs. It seems to be running fine. I got to do some road testing. So I applied for a collector plate on the BSA, and I went through all the hoops and took photos, gave them the information, and then finally they said, well, we need to see the VIN number on the frame. I said, well, it's painted over. So what I had to do, I had to sand the paint off the frame. And when they stamped the numbers back in 1967, they didn't use a very big hammer, so there's not a lot of raised up metal around the letters. It's very hard to see. So anyway, I got approval for the collector plate, so that's good. I worked on the cylinder head, and what I had to do, I ended up changing the valve guides. I had someone do it, my friend Lance. And I got a new exhaust valve, but the intake valve looked fine, so I didn't order one. And then when he looked at the valve, he says, it's worn right here, and I can feel it with my thumbnail. There's a little lip. He says it's worn down 2 thou, so I had to order another valve. So that's okay. So I'm going to show you the head. So it looks very good. It's a very nice job. New valves. Everything's looking clean. So that's good. That's all done. So in other parts on the engine, I got all new oil seals. So this is what goes over the countershaft sprocket. And I was going to show you how I install the oil seal. So this is the inside. This is where the primary chain fits on. So the oil seal has to go this way. Goes in like that. And this has a chamfer on it. This doesn't have a chamfer, so you press the oil seal in this way. We're going to use the arbor press. So I'll put a little bit of grease on there just to help it sit in. And there's a couple things I'm going to show you. Just need a little film there, just to help it sit in there. And I got the press all set up with the right spaces and all that. So, okay, so that's how it goes. So we'll go over to the arbor press now. Right, so I looked at this, and this here is raised up a little bit over this. So I put a block in the middle so it's not just resting on the edge like that. And then goes in. That's it. Very simple, but helps to have an arbor press. So that's it. Oil seal is installed. Okay, the next thing I wanted to show you was the oil pump. When I took off the oil pump, it wouldn't turn. It was kind of stuck. So I took it all apart, And I looked inside and everything looked fine. So what I did, I took the shaft, I took off the gear, held the shaft in the lathe in the 3-jaw chuck, and I took some 600 wet and dry paper and I just polished it. I held the paper in my fingers and just went back and forth, and I did that a couple times, and now it spins nicely. So it's better to have a pump that's free in the sense of turning than one that's stuck. Well, it would move and then it would stick once again, so it's fixed. I was looking at the parts last night because I have to order another list, and I was looking at the clutch pressure plate, and I'm looking at it and it's like, this one's bent. See how these are in line with each other? Can you see that? See how those are flat? Then look at this one. Oh, I see it. Well, it moves. Okay, so this is... Anyway, I guess that moved, but... Anyway, it's on the list. I'm going to get another one anyway. All right, this is a puzzle to me. I had the old nut. Well, I do have the old nut, and it's been knackered. It's got all sorts of marks on it. So I got a brand new nut, and they sure look the same. So this is where the old nut goes on, and it goes on nicely. It feels like a nice thread. So it goes right up to the end, right? And then I try the new nut on there, and it starts and then it stops. It won't go on there. So if I measure this, it's slightly under ½ inch. It's like 0.496. So that's ½ inch. And if I measure the threads, it's 20. So what that means is that it's ½ inch National Fine. So here's a tap, ½ inch National Fine, and you see how the threads match really well? Okay, so this is the new nut. And you see that? That's a nice thread. So ½ inch National Fine. But that won't fit into here. This is the old nut. So it makes no sense to me at all why it seems to be ½ inch National Fine, but this doesn't fit. So anyway, not sure what to do about that. That's just one of the things that can happen when you're fixing up an old bike, and this is 1967 BSA, and that was the year, it was a transition year where they still had a lot of Whitworth, but a lot of the threads became unified, which means, you know, like National Fine, things like that. So anyway, that's what happens when a restoration is taking place, or can happen. Okay, one thing I had to do was to check the end play of the flywheel in the cases. So I'm going to assemble it, and then I'll show you how I measure the end play. All right, so I've got the flywheels here. We're going to put spaces under there, because otherwise this hits onto the workbench. Okay. There we go. So I got to put in some screws. I don't torque it down, but I make it snug. Add all these nuts and bolts nickel plated. I bead blasted them and trying to make them nice. And there's no gasket that goes in between the cases, so I'm going to use some of that Loctite sealant. And it's orange and it works really well. And it seals gaps up to 15 thou. That's what I'm told. If I'm torquing these down, I'd go back and forth in an X pattern. So I'm not torquing it down, I'm just making it snug now. So it's 2 different sizes and it is Whitworth. I do have Whitworth wrenches. I thought I was going to have this bike done in the summer, but I was wrong. I misjudged. I was over optimistic. And that has been one of my habits, thinking I can do things faster than I can. Okay, so that's all snugged down. It's not torqued, but that's okay. And then let's spin this round. So I got my dial indicator, and it's mounted on a plate. So in the specs, in the manual, I'm looking for a gap between 2 thou and 5 thou, okay? So I'm going to set this to 0. There's the 0. Pretty close to 0. Then what I do is I put a screwdriver in here, and I'm going to raise up the flywheel. Can you see that? So it looks like 3 thou, so that's in spec. And there's a shim that goes in between the flywheel and the bearing. And you can change the shim. And because the bearing has a pretty good size radius on it, the shim also has a radius on it. I know they don't make them that way, but that's just because it came out of the motor. So anyway, that's the end play, and I want to show you something else that I discovered. Okay, so the camshaft goes in here, and these are the tappets. And you see how it's a little bit tapered? And the taper goes to the front. So that's how that fits. There's the tappets. This is the smaller side. Pretty sure I got that right. Going off memory. So the cam fits in here now. So the cam rubs against the tappets, and that's how the valves open up. So what I discovered, can you see this? I got a worn bushing. And I didn't realize that. I should have checked that before. So I had to order bushings. They probably got to come from England. So that's another reason that this isn't happening as fast as I thought. So I'll check the other side. So this is the case that fits over like that. So this side of the cam goes into here. Can you see that? That one's worn even more. Look at that. That's a bit nasty. What I found when I took the motor apart is there was a lot of old dirty oil in the bottom of the motor. So I think it got ridden pretty hard, and they never changed the oil much at all. So that's why this would wear quite well. Anyway, that's the situation with the BSA, and I've worked on this all week, and I've showed you a few things. I know it's not a very long video, but we are back, like I mentioned, and thanks for joining us. Mitch and I like coffees. If you buy us coffees, much appreciated. Please like, subscribe, tell your friends. We'll see you next time.